everybody. How was that for?
Mr. Mayor, you watch it.
Yeah, I never do that, do I? Next time, come down here and turn it on so I don't forget. There we go. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the work session for Tuesday, January the 10th. Happy New Year. This is actually our second meeting we've had. We had a special meeting and on January the 4th. Now's an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda. I have no speaker cards that are on anything other than items on the agenda. So Hannah is back there in the back. If you are ready to give her a speaker's card, please do so now because it's not good etiquette to bring it at 5 minutes till 7. So, okay, that said, we're going to go on to item number 1, which is a Resolution 2022-91 to affirm compliance with federal Title VI regulations. This is something we do every single year. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. We're going to call the roll now. Vice Mayor Barnhill.
Present.
Yeah, Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts is
Present.
absent. I'm sorry, Alderman Potts. Alderman Baggett, I'm getting confused, is not here tonight, and I'm here, so there's the roll call. And now we'll go on to item number 1, which I just read. Is there any question about item number 1? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, which is Resolution 2022-90, resolution acknowledging the letter of agreement between the Tennessee Main Street Program and the Downtown Franklin Association.
This is also something we do annually to support the Main Street program. This provides for our letter of support, and I think we have representatives here if you have any questions, but it's something we're proud to do every year and a great program that supports our downtown.
Okay, we'll keep moving along. So is Heidi here? Oh, Heidi Hood, she's the head of the Downtown Franklin Association, so wave your hand so everybody knows what you look like. No, that's not Heidi. That's Jeff. Okay, item 3 is we're going to defer to a future meeting the downtown traffic and parking study that is requested by, I think Alderman Baggett was not able to attend and wanted to make sure he was able to participate in that. And item 4 is City of Franklin Contract 2022-0264, professional services agreement with Civil and Environmental Consultancy for the Liberty Hills Pond Stream Restoration Project for an amount not to exceed $259,150.
So these are some engineering services associated with a project that you all have endorsed, and also the neighborhood has endorsed in terms of restoring a stream where there is a pond today. This provides for those professional services to support that. Paul, anything you want to add to
No,
that?
that was great. Again, the neighborhood's in support of it. We're working on an agreement between us and the HOA. They've actually signed the agreement, but we're taking it through the law approval process, and we'll bring that before you in the next month to 2 months. And as soon as that funding becomes active, we just want to have this contract in place so we can proceed with design as soon as possible.
This is funded through American Recovery dollars and so Rescue Act dollars. And so about 65% of it will be funded through state dollars that are coming through that program, and we provide a match of 35% for the remaining.
Alderman Berger.
Thank you, Paul, for working on this. This is like, we've been doing this for years. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate Mr. Smith and everybody at the HOA working with you. Are there any other issues with this that we are going to move ahead and then just remove the pond, put it back into the stream, and then all of this is included in this, right?
Correct.
Right. Every part of the restoration.
Every part of the restoration that the HOA's asked for is included here.
Okay. All right. Thank
Should
you so
be-
much.
Should be good. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody good? Item 5 is ordinance 2022-39 to rezone 29.46 acres from estate residential to PD 2.61 district for property located south of Liberty Pike, east of Oxford Glen Drive, Navarre PUD subdivision, establishing a public hearing on February the 14th.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mayor, we could talk about 5 and 6 together, if that's appropriate.
Let's do it.
It's for a PUD at this property. The PUD has 77 single-family dwelling units in it. Envision Franklin calls for mixed residential in this area, so it promotes a little bit more, but the single-family is well within Envision Franklin. There's 2 lot sizes, 65 feet wide and 40 feet wide. Staff supported it. Planning Commission voted unanimously for it. The one outstanding item with this plan is that there will be a requirement to have a right-of-way that goes through the McKay's Mill open space. The HOA has been in discussions about this, but they have not granted that full access yet. That is something that can come with site plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Berger.
Thank you, Amy. So, you know me and this road over there. Matt starts to laugh already. But it is on the corner. It's not along Clovercroft. It is on the corner. And talking with all the neighbors over there, all the constituents over there, I've had, actually, I don't think I've had any don't do it kind of thing. And the HOA has been in support of it. And we were at 129 homes, I believe. Now we're down, or 120. I think we're down to 77 now, correct?
Correct.
They did not want mixed use over there. They did not want the mixed residential, rather. So they really liked having just the homes that would blend into McKay's Mill. They're also providing the walkway that goes over the hill on Liberty. And the HOA is not opposed, and they've had 2 meetings with the residents of McKay's Mill, and there's been pretty much across the board, there's been support to give them the easement, so I don't think that's going to be a problem either. So I guess I'm listening to the constituents again on this one, and I wanted to say no originally, but I think the plan, these people need to sell their property. They need to move on, and I think this is an excellent plan that was sought by a lot of conversations. So I just wanted to put that out there so people understood it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any others?
I
Go ahead,
was
Alderman
just going to say, it
Peterson.
might have been a good idea to show, you know, on the development plan, where the lots are and everything. We should have probably put that up, but it's okay that we haven't, but I'm just saying.
Okay.
that.
Do you want me to pull it up, or is it okay to move on?
Development plan, yeah.
Well, I think we have,
Oh, somebody.
at least Greg Gamble wanted to maybe make some comment. Is Randy Arnold, are you part of the Navarra? Where's Randy Arnold? What do you want to speak to, Mr. Arnold?
It's Navarro. He's the applicant.
Okay,
He's the developer.
okay, great.
And I'm Greg Gamble. I just wanted to say that we're available here tonight to answer any questions that you may have in case there's something that's left unsaid or unstated. We just wanted to make ourselves available, Mayor.
And I would just say, Mr. Arnold, thank you for listening to the neighbors. Thank you for listening to constituents in that area, and for reducing your plan and making it much more walkable, and also putting the park in the front. Thank you.
Did you want to speak, Mr. Arnold?
I just would like to thank Alderman with the support that we have. As she mentioned, we had pretty good turnout with the community of McKay's Mill because they're, you know, pretty much adjacent to us, going to be definitely part of the community. So we really appreciate that support if there's anybody here with that as well. So appreciate your approval on that.
Any other questions or comments on 5 or 6 from the board? Not, we'll keep moving along. Item 7 is the Parkland Impact Fee, City of Franklin Contract Number 2022-0247 with Clovercroft Holding LLC between the City of Franklin for Parkland Impact Fee and Construction Agreement for Navarra PUD subdivision. Any questions on that one? Number 8, great comments, Lisa. City of Franklin Contract 2022-132 with Market Street Management LLC for the Parkland Impact Fee and Construction Agreement for Eastworks District.
We are sort of closing the loop on this. This approval was given a while back, but the Parkland agreement itself did not get fully executed, so this is kind of closing the loop on that, bringing that back to you. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of providing appropriate credit for amenities that relate to parkland and recreation services, but this lays that out, clarifies it, and is executed by the development team. So I don't know if there's anything else to add to it, Lisa?
No, sir. I've enjoyed my time. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to item 9, which is ordinance 2022-40, and ordinance revising section 106 and section 207 of Title 18 Water and Sewers and Appendix A Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 18 for revision to the impact fees of the Franklin Municipal Code, establishing a public hearing on February the 14th, 2023.
I think we'll summarize a couple key points. This is really a follow-on to the work session that you all had at the end of November regarding the impact fees. And what we're proposing specifically is an implementation of the water impact fee as it's been updated. And then you may remember we had proposed a 4-phase implementation of the wastewater or the sewer component of the impact fee. I think our direction, or what we talked about out of that work session, was to implement the initial component of those 4 phases and then do some additional work on funding, options, ideas, concepts, working on a number of different elements there until we're comfortable, and that's going to take a little more time, but to do that initial piece. So we're going to walk you through just a couple slides from that discussion that sort of show you those numbers, and be glad to answer any other questions from there. So, Mark or Michelle?
Okay, so there we go. Is that better? Okay. So we, as we've kind of talked about before, we did, for the collection and distribution system, we did the equity buy-in method, which is our existing assets, which is bringing new connections up to kind of the equity that the existing ratepayers have already paid in that. So we as a utility, we've done a combination of both of them. So the equity buy-in, you'll see up on the screen right now, for the distribution system, when we take our distribution plant valuation, and then we have all these calculations that the financial consultant put in there. With all of the investments that we've made, it's $1,800. So when you add, the next slide is the incremental cost. So this is where we've done the investment that we made at the water plant. So as a utility, we've chosen to do a hybrid of the two, because we have, there's a lot of different ways that you could do it because of our assets are kind of divided that way. Our water plants are more capacity driven. So the hybrid of the two adds both of those. So the incremental cost is based off of the capacity of that plant. When you add, that's $1,700. When you add both of those together, that's where you get the $3,600. That investment has already been made, right? So that's covering the equity in the distribution system plus the equity in the water plant that's already been invested, right? That's in the new plant we already have. So we're recommending full implementation of that fee without a phased-in approach. Does anyone have any questions before we move on?
And this is for drinking water.
This is for drinking water. These are all slides that you've already seen, so they shouldn't be super new. So then we'll go to the sewer as well. So the sewer is the same thing. So for the collection system, we did the equity buy-in, which is bringing new customers up to the equity that the existing customers have paid in the system already, right? So all of the improvements that we've done, all of the capacity improvements that we've done. So that's almost the $2,400. The same thing, we used both of them. So we used a hybrid approach. So the equity buy-in and the incremental cost to count for the collection system, and then the wastewater plant. So this is the north plant. So we're kind of characterizing this north and south plant right now. You'll see that this investment is a smaller portion of the total 16 million gallons because that's the increase in capacity from the 12 million gallons that's there right now, right? So the entire 132 million cost of construction is not borne by the new connections, just the increase in capacity. That's where that difference comes from. I just want to make sure that that's the equitable portion of this. Wait, can you go back one more? So that's where we get the $3,500. That's the existing capacity in our plant that we've already invested in that, right? Moving up to that for an additional MGD, right? We've already, that's the construction that's happening right now. So the next slide is the incremental cost for the new facility, for the potential new facility, right? So the costs that are on the left side are the costs that have been included in this calculation. So this calculation is not based off of our current customers. This is based off of the capacity of the plant divided into single-family units, and then those single-family units essentially divided by the cost of what we anticipate needing, right? So the cost is all of those summations on the left-handed side. And you'll see that some of those costs are clearly defined. We've already incurred those costs. Some of those that say TBD are the ones that we've not incurred yet. So those are in the future, right? We've not incurred the design cost. We've not incurred, the construction cost of the plant, the financing cost. So those first couple costs are included all of the costs are included in the overall calculation of the $10,000. Next slide. So you see kind of a summary here. Is that making sense? These are all slides you've seen. So summary here. So the equity buy-in is the $2,400, the incremental cost for both of the potential new facilities, the $3,500 plus the $10,700 is what comes to the $16,000 SFUE, right? So it's all costs that are it's not they're the hybrid part of our calculation is what is creating that fee. Our current impact fee is the $3,500, so it's an increase in change, right? So what we are proposing, the next slide, is this phased-in approach in which Eric has mentioned quite a bit. So a 4-year phased approach is we're taking the current impact fee, which is the $3,500, and then taking that change and dividing it by 4, essentially. And so each year of that 4 years would be 25% of the delta. So our total fee is $16,000. If you minus the $3,500 current fee, right, and then divide that by 4, we're going to take 25% of that and add that each year. Does that make sense?
So what we're proposing right now, though, is to do 3,300, which is the first 25%, and then stop there until we do some additional work, looking at different funding options, work through that with you. We're having some additional discussion. I'll kind of run through some things that we're working on as we speak, and we'll be working on over the next few months. We've engaged our financial advisor, PFM, and looking at some other options and some things that are there examples of other places in the country that have worked on sewer plant expansions and what techniques have they used to assign and assign those costs. We've also engaged our bond counsel because we've got existing debt. We've got existing debt on the work we are doing and have done, some of which stretches out into 2052 because we have a 30-year loan with the state of Tennessee along with bondholders that also have those obligations. So we got to make sure we're working with that appropriately. We are sitting down with representatives from NAIOP. We're doing that this Friday. NAIOP is a group representing some of the development community to look at some of their ideas and engage them. So that will start that process in terms of looking at those as well. Some of the other things we're doing that had come up in our conversation is CDM, who had performed the Integrated Water Resource Plan, is updating the modeling and the projections related to that to reflect what's really happened compared to what the projections were in the original plan. Also, Hazen, another of our consultants who's working on this specific future plan, is also looking at growth projections as well to compare that to specifically the sizing of the plant. One of the questions we heard is that this is an 8 million gallon a day plant that is being looked at. Does that sizing fit the projected growth, the existing growth that we've seen in the last 10 years? How does that fit in? As you know, we're shifting some demand from the existing plant to the south to help kind of balance that to deal with growth and redevelopment in the northern portion of the city as well. So how do those pieces fit with the size of the plant, the size of the investment? We know we also are still working through some land use planning components that could have impact on land use and demand on the system. That includes the Goose Creek Area Plan, which has been underway for some time now and continues. That will have some influence on how we project those demands and the demands of growth in that area, the southeast section of our city. And of course, we're working through the Envision Franklin land use plan update. Don't know that we want to totally connect that to the conclusion of that effort, but there may be elements that come out of that also influence what we project, what we expect in terms of certain land use patterns, especially in the undeveloped areas of the community. So those are efforts that are underway that will incur and inform our decisions about whether to do these additional phases or take some other approach. But what I think came out of our initial discussion, or what we're talking about tonight and what is recommended, is to at least take that first step, because it represents the investment you've already made at the existing plant. Michelle referenced $132 million construction. That's true, but when you layer in the engineering and other costs, we're talking around $150 million that has been invested in adding that capacity and upgrading the treatment process at our existing plant. Those are dollars you've already invested or are investing right now. So this is a pathway to assign those costs to growth that will occur. And it also does transition us from this meter size basis into a single family unit basis, which is, I think, inherently more fair and represents the demand on the system as opposed to an arbitrary, what's the smallest meter size you can get away with to serve your development. It looks at more the demands on the system and then allocates those costs accordingly. So that's what we've proposed to you tonight. It is on for a vote. That's where we had deferred it at the last meeting. It would be the first of 3 votes. It would set up a public hearing on February 14th for second reading and a public hearing there as well. So it's really the first step, but moves us forward from there. So I don't know if there's other slides we wanted to cover.
Can you go back to that slide where it summarizes them? Yeah, that one. So you can see right here, those first 2 numbers. So the equity buy-in and then the incremental cost, that's essentially the first proposed phase that we're doing. So that's what Eric was mentioning. That's what we've already invested in our treatment facility, right? That's that 4 million gallons of additional capacity. That's what's on the board agenda tonight. So in the ordinance, there's only that first phase of the $6,800 impact fee, and then we'll continue to reevaluate it as we get costs that come in, as we look at other financing options.
And also the way it is written is it is open for you to guide us in terms of the implementation date. We've recommended in this discussion July 1, but that is really left open for the board to give that direction, because that was not clear from our work session discussion a month or so ago.
Alderman Brown.
Actually, that was going to be my question, because I thought we were all pretty aligned to moving this to an end of the year, first of January 2024. So I agree with you. The takeaways from that work session, very accurate, with the exception of I thought we were pretty solidly on a January 2024. So I don't think I would support anything earlier than that.
Okay.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I agree, Alderman Brown, with your recollection. That's what I understood, is that we were at this first phase to move forward. And Eric, I appreciate the fact that you've reiterated right now that passing phase 1 is written in such a way that it's an open way for future guidance for the future phases, and it gives us enough breadth to make adjustments and partnership. And I'm also very interested to see what how the meeting goes on Friday. And I know that you guys have done your due diligence on the questions that were previously provided. And so I know that I look forward to seeing what the outcome of that meeting is.
Alderman Hanson, then I'll get Alderman
So for public reference,
Barnhill, and then Alderman Berger.
can you maybe explain to the public why we didn't have incremental increases over the years for savings for a moment like this, instead of just doubling it when we needed to play catch-up?
So when you modify impact fees, they need to be relative to projects that are in the near future. So 15 years ago, 16 years ago when I started, the impact fees were in decent shape. We did make some modifications in 2008. While we could have done increases sooner than that, which regrettably we should have, the bulk of this cost is related to the future capacity down wherever that new capacity is. And it's also related to the current project. So if we go back to the equity buy-in method of 2391 relative to our current impact fee, I mean, we're not too far off. So really the drastic increase is related to a project that's currently being constructed, plus the foreseeable project that we have coming in about 8 to 10 years. So that's why.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, because you need to know what you're actually investing, not just a projected And as you get closer to that timing, you have more certainty. I will tell you, if we'd done this over again, we would have done this sooner, probably when we got our bids for the plant that we had. But there are a lot of other complications going on over the last 3 years. So that drives it. We're now getting to a point where we have, and the $150 million that we've put in for consideration for the south plant is a pretty conservative number. I mean, it's at least going to be that much, given what we know and what we've just are spending right now on the existing expansion and upgrade. So you're in that planning window. You need to be close enough to it that you have some level of certainty that you're doing it and that you know the scope of it. So all those factors play in. Having said that, you know, it would have been better to have done this at least probably 3 years ago when we had that cost certainty. But this is where we are, and it's an important investment that drives and supports both growth that has occurred and is projected in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
And then I am in agreement with Alderman Potts and Brown that I was also under the understanding it would be a 2024 decision for roll-in. But I also am still on the path of some sort of an exemption for people who are in the pipeline, because here's what happens. And this is not, I'm not surmising, it is accurate what I'm about to say. This is exactly what happens. We start going through the planning process, we're almost there, then they come back with more. So what will happen, whether by intent or not, is by the time we roll this in, magically their plan for permit will not be able to start until after these fees increase. It may be on purpose, it may not be. But I don't want to put any of these people in harm's way, because this is a common thing. It happens almost every single time. When they almost are at the finish line, boom, they get rejected and have to start over again. So I want to see some protections for those people who are in this pipeline right now, because this very thing could cause their plan not to be developed. And they've gotten too far in this process and approvals from us to see something like this happen. So I can't agree to this unless there's some protection for the people in the pipeline, and that we delay this till at least 2024, but are still protecting them at the same time. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
2 or 3 comments. Number one, if I remember right, the new plan would have been 200 million. Is that correct? I think you said the 150.
It's 150.
150 is the one out. But the new one that we're looking at is approximately 200 million.
We've got 150 in the construction piece. There's other costs that probably take you pretty much to 200 when you factor it all in, yeah.
The second thing, I have no problems in making this effective January 1st, 2024. Can we amend that in this ordinance?
Yeah, it's written for you to give us that date. We just weren't entirely clear, and it kind of came up at the end of the discussion, so we didn't want to assume it, but it's there for you to fill in the blank.
Third, I can support it as is. I think we're giving anyone in the pipeline a year to get their act together and get started on whatever they need to start. And even if they did not get started within a year, it's not the $16,719 that they're going to.
Right.
It is the $3,500 plus the 30, whatever other number,
3,300, yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
no other number was. It would be the $6,700. Granted, that's doubling. That's a basically doubling, but it's not going to the $16,719. So I have no problems in the way the ordinance is written. I have no problem in the way that we're looking at doing this. And I agree, I think we probably did discuss some implementation at the beginning of next year. But you know how it is when you're around Christmas and you're happy and jolly, you know, sometimes you forget some of the key factors that are factored into a particular discussion. But I can support what we've got here.
Alderman Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some heartburn with some of this stuff, but I thought we had been saving for this, and we had some stuff in the pipeline for this. And I'm very concerned with the people in the pipeline. As Alderman Hanson said, there's a lot of time and money going into this for these people, and for example, we all know, we've talked about the development next to the church on Franklin Road, and, that lot, I think how we approach this may kick some of these people just out to the curb. And too much time and money has been invested in this. I'd like some kind of protection for that. I'm definitely would not want to do anything before January 1st. But the other thing is, I don't think I can vote, I know I will not vote yes on this tonight until NAOP has their meeting with us on Friday, because I know they asked for that before, and Eric, I know we have the holidays, and we just can't accommodate probably trying to get meetings and things, and I know that's a delay. But you mentioned afterwards, we vote on this and everything, and afterwards we want to get their ideas and everything else. I really think we need to have that meeting Friday. And in 2 weeks, then I can vote on that, because I just need to know what they're going to say to you all, and I need to know what, I'd like to come to that meeting. I need to hear them, and they're very concerned. They have, back in December, mailed us these frequently asked questions, and we got that. Obviously, with time and everything, they didn't get the questions answered. They're meeting with you Friday, is that correct?
Right.
And so I just don't want to jump the gun quite yet. I think we need to wait on this vote tonight. I just don't feel comfortable with that until you've had that meeting, because obviously, I mean, they have some pretty in-depth questions here that I'd like to have some answers to those too. Some of those things I'm not sure I'm understanding quite correctly, what they're asking here, but I do know that, we talked about grandfathering in, we talked about mud, PIDs, TIFs, all that stuff, but, I don't know how practical those are, and I don't know if we can even implement some of those things in the future, which does not mean that we hold this section up. We can implement those things as we go along. As you
Right.
said, might look at other ways to have funding.
Right.
And I agree with that. I mean, there are ways, but I just think that meeting needs to take place on Friday. I'm sorry that it didn't take place before tonight's meeting.
Well, let me be clear
understand
that what we're asking you to do is really related to the existing investment. I don't know that there's a whole lot of discussion there in terms of,
For the
because that's a
existing.
fixed, we know that number, and we're trying to allocate it to the single-family units. You're given a year for implementation, the way it talks now.
Yeah.
The real primary focus of that discussion is going to be around the South Plant and that component, that 150, 200 million component, and how you phase that, what that looks like and what their ideas are around that. I think that's really where you're going to get that benefit. And also, this is a first reading of 3. You won't vote again until February 14th and have a public hearing then, and then you'll have still a third reading after that at the end of February. So you do have time if you want to keep it moving with at least a first vote tonight, and we'll be glad to report back to you on that. I think our primary focus will be more on the South Plant costs and how we can work with that. And that's going to take longer than what we can do in a couple weeks. I mean, that's going to take some time. The research we're doing through some other avenues is going to take some time. So I think you're looking, if I had to guess, at decisions and coming back to you in a 3 to 6 month time frame for those, future phases and the components that relate to the South Plant. So I don't know if that changes your thinking on it, but just to kind of put the context of what we're dealing with and what we're asking you to do on this first vote, and what will probably happen
Well,
pretty much later in the year after we've done more research, had more dialogue, and come back to you with some more structure related to that and any other adjustments that might make sense. So you've got some time between now and implementation on even the first phase, as well as the other work that we'll do in the
all
next several
right,
months.
so if we would vote for this tonight, and then we come back, and you have the meeting on Friday, and then we can hear from a lot of you after that meeting. We still have 2 votes left on that.
Yeah, and you have till February 14th for the public hearing and second reading.
All right, I'm
So you do have some time there if that
I'm
helps.
comfortable with that, if you all can get your comments submitted and have a good meeting on Friday, some of you that are here, I see. I'd appreciate it, because we do need to hear from you. Thank you.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Blanton.
Thank you, Michelle and Mark. Every time we regurgitate this, I understand it a little bit more, and this was really helpful. I think I understand what you're saying. I do want to see it get to public hearing because I think it's important for us to hear from the development
Sure.
community in a public forum. I think they've been doing their homework. We all know that this has been something they've talked about. But it's interesting as I think about our next, I guess, band of growth is what I'll say in the east or in the southeast. So I'm saying this out loud because I'm starting to rationalize this. The existing plant, even though we have expanded its capacity, will never accommodate the future growth on the other side of town. So what we're trying to do, even though I wish, as we all did, we'd gotten ahead of it, is plan before all of this planning has gone into the Goose Creek area, to the east, south
Right.
area, and all of the annexation that we've done. It's like, oh, wait, we've got all this new growth, and if we don't get ahead of it and start letting them pay for the infrastructure that they're demanding of us, we're never going to recapture that.
Right.
Now, I think the hard pill for me to swallow, and I'm going to assume almost everybody next to me, was the jump from the existing to 16,000 was, I think I used the word whiplash in the last couple of weeks. So while we are here to serve the citizens, we're also here to make sure that our citizens are taken care of with the developers who put the rooftops over their heads. So I think I would echo what everybody said, that we do have some projects that have gone and done their due diligence and are almost at the finish line. And to me, it feels like we're ripping the carpet out from underneath them, and I don't really want to be a part of that. However, so the good news for you is I do understand the need for the increase in the impact fee. I just wish that we had been able to forecast all of the projected growth that's coming in the southeast that we really didn't even see coming.
Yeah.
So
One, about 1,000 acres of it has annexed in by property owner
Before the-
request
yeah, in the
in the
last-
last few years. So it
Absolutely.
is a little bit of a evolving challenge for us, but this is part of it, and it's all about how we assign the cost. Do you assign it to ratepayers? Do you assign it to development? And what's the fair way to do that over time?
Well, and the last thing I'll say is as we all know, it's the hot place to be, and it's a privilege to live and build and all that stuff in Franklin. And I guess if you're the last one to the dance, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than it was in 1977. So,
Alderman Potts, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. And Alderman Blanton, I get excited as you talk about Ward 3 down there.
it's all you, baby.
You got it. I am very excited.
Doesn't take much, does it?
Yes, sir. Eric, I actually just had a simple question. As I just looked at the calendar here for Friday, if you could just provide where the meeting is, when the meeting is, or send a meeting invite out if we're able to attend when you...
I don't think we can do that. This
Okay.
needs to be a meeting with staff and
Okay.
not with a collection of board members, because it's not a public meeting.
Okay.
But we'll be glad to give you a summary
provide
of
us the
feedback
notes.
of what we hear. And we had provided responses to one set of questions. We'll provide responses to the second set as well. But we'll be glad to give you a report. But I want to be careful about us having a quasi-public meeting with multiple aldermen in place there, so.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of comments if I could, and I think the first comment would be keep hearing comments about all these projects in the pipeline. Well, I'd kind of like to have some kind of information of what we're talking about, all these projects in the pipeline and so on. Somebody's ultimately got to pay for what we're doing, and we can't keep kicking it down the road, and so I'm eager to continue to move this thing forward. Tonight, I wanted to suggest that we also consider indexing whatever we do. I remember back with the Improve Act through the Tennessee General Assembly, one of the things that many of us felt was important that the gasoline tax be indexed with some type of consumer price index. And so each year, it would gradually go up, and so you wouldn't end up quite in this situation that we're in, where we have such a big jump. So I'd love to see us consider indexing. Tonight, it looks like to me we're doing several important things if you want to vote on it. One is it's step one, $3,300. Number two is you're establishing that we're going to be using the SFU, single family unit, from here on rather than meter size. Secondly is we're going to be establishing an effective date. Let me look at my notes. So I think wherever we end up as far as during the voting meeting, I think I would like to see if you're going to make a motion that we include those things in there. But I'd love to see it continue to move forward, and, January 2024, it'll be here before we know it. So any other comments? Alderman Peterson.
I appreciate the things that other people have said and have covered a great deal of it. I guess the kind of real background of this is that the people that use the water and sewer are the ones who pay for this. It is not ever paid by taxpayers. And I mean, it's not paid by everybody that's not a user there. So so in other words, we can't put just our regular tax money into
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's not general fund money at all.
Thank you,
Absolutely
thank you.
not. And the other thing is, if we don't act appropriately and put it on the people that are going to be developing and using, ultimately, it's going to go back on the
Correct.
people that are using the water and sewer every single day. So that's why it's important to keep it moving, and that's why it's important to get this thing worked out. Any other questions or comments, Alder Vice Mayor?
I like the indexing. Are you talking about index like the $13,172?
It'd be basically assign an inflationary factor is what
Yeah,
I thought.
exactly.
Okay.
So that changed then. So would you do it on the first years?
Well, where it would normally work is you would implement the fee, and then annually, probably on the anniversary of that fee, you would say, what's the consumer price index, or what is a level that something you would want to apply an inflationary factor to.
So that would be.
And you could even cap that if you wanted to. You could say, follow the CPI or the base CPI, not to exceed, 3% or 5%.
So that basically then would be the fee plus the inflation number would be in January 1st, 2025. Is that?
If you did an annual inflationary adjustment, which is the way we've done something like that in the past, is typically tied to an annual calculation.
And the other thing is, and I don't want to be too, but I don't think the implementation being a year out is necessarily jerking the rug out of too many. Okay, if you.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got a year. And if you can't work out whatever you need to work out between now and then, your fee is not going to be $16,719. It's going to be $6,000 and something. $3,500 plus the $3,000 or so. That's a fourth of the $13,172. So, yeah.
Correct.
But I agree with you, Mayor. I think we need to push this forward, and I also agree with Ann. These costs are for future growth. These costs should not come back on the current ratepayer. If we keep kicking it down the can down the road, that's eventually where it comes to.
And we want to be determining how to do it rather than somebody else telling us. That's important. So, how about item 10, which is ordinance revising the installation fees for Title 18, Chapter, I can't read that, I've marked over it, Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties under Chapter 18 of the Franklin Municipal Code.
So this is a return item. We talked about this in December. We're going to give you a little more detail. This is updating installation fees to match the actual costs incurred by the city when we install meters, et cetera, and we're going to walk you through that.
Yeah, so we had brought this to you before Christmas, and so this presentation really goes into a little bit more depth. And then in your packet, I think that was emailed to you because it was a little bit after the date. We have a full a full breakdown of all of the costs that are included in this. So kind of the purpose of this, as we've talked about, is to recapture the actual costs that we associate with installing a new connection, right? So we're, this is as you can see with all of the metadata that's attached to this. I mean, this is the labor and the material and the equipment costs that we use. right? And so we have taken, typical installations. They're not the really, ones where we encounter a lot of rock, and they're not the ones where it's, we're all installing force main installations. So these are typical installations we see. But it's also, this ordinance doesn't impact or doesn't change the impact fee. So this is completely separate. This is just the installation fees that we're talking about here. So I know that the tables that we have are kind of confusing, so I tried to make these green boxes to kind of look at them a little bit easier. It's a big table with a lot of numbers. I get it. So you'll see on the left-hand side is our meter sizes, right? So we charge installation fees by meter sizes, right? Because it's installing the meter. So impact fees based off of SFUs, this is just installing the meter. So on the first column in the box, we have the existing installation fees. The second column is the proposed installation fees, and then it was asked in the last board meeting that we kind of show a price increase. So we showed the positive and the negative price increase, right? Because we're reducing the 3 to 8 inch meters that we've installed, or that we don't install, that are installed in the city that we just inspect. So those costs are drastically reducing, right? You can see that for an 8 inch one is 92%. So we have 2 different types. We have, occasionally when we lay a line, we'll make taps for that, for those houses or for those businesses that we can see coming. We can install just the meter, or we can make a new tap, right? And so we have 2 different types of installation fees that we have. The second kind of section of green boxes is installation of just the meter. And then we have the same cost. So the existing fees, the proposed fees, and then the percent increase or decrease based off of those. The next slide. So these are for, so this is the same, we can go through all these slides number by number if you want. This is the water installation fee. So this is a new, this is on the distribution lines. The same thing. So we've lumped 3 to 8 inches together because those are the meters that we don't install. The developer will install those, and we just inspect those. So we have just the meter only and the meter box, and then we have the complete installation where we're making the tap. So this is just an example. This is in that 10-page long packet that we have you with all of those tables. So you can see how we've broken it down into labor, materials, and then equipment for a full installation. These are so for just installing a meter, it's pretty basic. It's pretty generic for us. We've kind of, we've estimated the time. These are the average hourly rates for our folks who do this. But you can see toward the bottom, the one reason why I wanted to include this is you can see toward the bottom, the meter and the MXU, which is, they go with our automatic metering system. That's a bulk of the cost, right? So a bulk of the cost is because equipment has increased, right? Our labor is increased for sure, but the equipment has increased. And it's the same thing for all of those. It is not, the meters aren't as cheap as we could get them anymore.
And 2/3 of your cost is materials.
Yeah.
When you look at this as well.
I'd also like to point out, when you look at, excuse me, so the cost that we're proposing for the 3/4 inch is $500. Is that correct, Michelle? Yeah, for the meter only. And then for both the meter and the complete installation is $3,500. I just wanted to point out that that $3,500 is a summation of the five.
What we did to break it down is we have a cost of just a meter installation, and then to get the complete installation, we take the meter cost and we add the cost to make a tap, right? So the packet that you have may be a little bit confusing because Eric had asked, where does this $500 come from? Is it just a fee? Well, it's because you add the 2 costs together, right? I wanted to break it down so you could see those equipment costs. Yes. So in the complete installation, which is the right side, we have the equipment and the materials, which is to make the tap. It's on a pressurized main. It's a little bit more involved than a gravity main. You have those in your packet for each size of tap each meter and each size tap that we make for both water and sewer. And then you also have those for the inspection cost and some of the hours that are involved in the inspection cost for the larger meters. Does anyone have any questions on that breakdown? Okay. So the next one we have is the sewer. There we go. So we have up to a 2-inch sewer service. Those are typically the force mains, the smaller diameter grinder pumps that we install. So those are a little bit different than the gravity 6-inch mains that we install. So we have those broken down into two categories as well, and then both where a tap is already made. So when we laid the interceptor, we made taps for houses versus when we've laid an interceptor across country and someone's subdividing a lot and we've got to make a new tap for a house. Those are the difference between those two. Nope. So effluent disposal fee, this fee has not changed. The only thing is we took away the GPM column in the ordinance. Nothing has changed about these fees. This is a one-time fee that goes toward the operation and development of the reclaim system. So this goes to all sewer customers. So the reclaim fees are the same percentage increase as the water distribution fees because it's a pressurized main. It involves the same kind of equipment, same set of meter, same type of meter is installing on the distribution system. So those are the same as well. We have the inspection fee for the larger meters is gone down to $1,000 because we don't install those meters. So when we presented this last time, it was once again a little bit of a jump. So we were asked to kind of look at having a phased-in approach for this as well. And so we used the same methodology for a phased-in approach as we did for the impact fees, is we took the cost of installation right now, and then the additional cost, and consider that the delta, right? And so the phased-in approach is over 2 years, so taking that delta, dividing it by 2, and adding it on every year. So the first year would be, and I have kind of an example calculation right there. So the first year would be the installation fee for that meter plus the delta plus 50% of the new fee. And then the second year would be the installation fee plus 100% of the new, of the proposed cost.
So we've thrown a lot of numbers at you. This is not on for consideration tonight. I think you deferred it to 2 weeks from now. So I don't know how you want to proceed with this, if you want to absorb this a little bit, and we can either bring it back on work session along with I think you deferred it to the 24th as well. We could do both those, or however you'd like to approach that. I am sensitive to the number of items we have on here and the time we've got, and Michelle and Mark have given you a lot of detail, and I think tried to provide a little more color in a little more from what we saw a month ago. So hopefully this is helpful in that regard as well. So let's see what else you need and go from there. Take your direction from there.
I see Alderman Berger shake her head. What does that mean? Okay. All right. Let's do that then. We'll continue to move it to another work session too, so people can.
I mean, we've seen this, but still, it's a lot of numbers thrown at us.
Well, I applaud them for such a comprehensive analysis of what it really costs us to do something, because if it's costing us that much to do it, if we're not charging for it, the ratepayer is ultimately paying for it someday. All the ratepayers, not the one that's getting the new meter. So, how about item 11, which is Resolution 2022, resolution to solidify the goals for schematic design of a new city hall on the historic public square in Franklin. And I think we were going to pull this.
We're going to pull this. This was drafted before our meeting last Wednesday. We have deadlines with the agenda materials. So this is drafted before that with the idea of sort of solidifying some goals in schematic design. I think those goals still kind of apply, and 12 will address that. But we know we are also working on some other, information gathering and assessment, analysis, if you will, of some other options as well. So let's just pull that. That's on both agendas. We'll pull that and move to number 12, if you would.
Well, I've got 3 people that want to speak about City Hall. And I think
12 is City Hall as well, so however you want.
Let's just do those speakers now, if we could. And I'm going to allow each 2 minutes. Barry Beasley, Bob Ravner, and Rod Heller. So.
Hello. I'm Barry Beasley, President and CEO of the Heritage Foundation, and this is really a follow-up to the other evening, but I've received a lot of calls and emails this week about the topic of the two potential locations for City Hall, which really shows the community's interest. It's a once-in-a-lifetime decision that will impact the historic character and sense of place in downtown Franklin, so it definitely needs a great deal of thought and conversation. Heritage Foundation is a 55-year-old historic preservation organization and the owner of 5 historic properties in downtown Franklin. We also own and operate the Downtown Franklin Association, which is a support mechanism for the 16-block district. We currently support 200 merchants and building owners in downtown Franklin who are our members. We've all experienced and we know the benefits of City Hall being located in the square. However, we know that there could be benefits to both locations, and we look forward to gathering more information. So we're committed to doing our part, and this is what we're committed to doing. The Heritage Foundation and the DFA will do our due diligence on this topic. Specifically, we're planning to discuss this with the merchants, building owners, and our members. We also plan to consult with Main Street America and the National Trust for Historic Preservation for recommendations and case studies for the best path forward for a vibrant downtown. And we look forward to having a seat at the table with the City of Franklin as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bob Ravener, 221 3rd Avenue South. I'm part of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, but speaking as a private citizen today, and certainly recognize that the board has to do its due diligence with respect to costs, and costs always have to factor in to what we're trying to do to maintain our standard of living, quality of life. But I would also say that, for me and people that I've talked to, I think we need a vision for what we want to try to do in these various areas. And I've seen too many of these one-off types of decisions that get made because of some proposal that comes up. And I think ultimately the board and the city has to decide, what do we want Columbia Avenue to become down the road? And once we open the door for looking at this one piece of property, you're going to have to open the door to look at everybody else who wants to offer up a proposal for that. And that's going to be time-consuming, it's going to be costly, and we still don't know where the ultimate decision will be. I, for one, and I know people I've talked to, would be very concerned with what would replace it if you moved it. So none of us could ever support something like that unless we knew what was going to come in its place. I've also seen lots of data, I'm no expert on it, but lots of data that would support needing a functioning city hall in a downtown area that maintains vibrancy within the community. I also think you have to look at the future value of this property. Obviously, this property is going to be much more valuable than what's out there on Columbia Avenue or later, and we can't ignore that fact either. And as has been said, I think this is going to be more than just about dollars and cents. There is the vibrancy of the downtown community and what that ultimately means for the future of Franklin. I've seen other communities do that. I know there are lots of other examples of where this has taken place, and I think we can certainly weigh in on those kinds of things to understand what's going to be so important for us downtown. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rod Heller, 1344 Carnton Lane, here in Franklin. I was surprised when I learned last week that the president of H.G. Hill, after extensive discussion for some time about the future of his Columbia Avenue proposal, suggested the idea of a swap. While I give great kudos to Mr. Granberry for leadership of his company, I thought that represented a microcosm, the problems we have in Franklin. We're good problems in many ways because we're, of course, exposed to developers, particularly from out of town, inundating us with imaginative, thoughtful ideas. These are smart, capable people, and they will take, to the maximum degree they can, opportunities to participate in this great community that we have. It led me to reflect about 3 ideas, comments, principles, thoughts that I wanted to share with this group. First, I concur with the views of those expressed here and elsewhere that it's essential that City Hall remain downtown. Aside from personal views, though, I think almost all organizations are concerned with economic development, concerned with small towns, concerned with medium-sized towns, emphasize the importance of main city functions being at the core of the city. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, which Barry, I was a trustee for many years and vice chairman, has that as one of its cores. I think you will also find that the Urban Land Institute, one of the major development entities, which incidentally Mr. Granberry was Nashville president in 2016, suggests this government programs, offices should be at the city core. To me, I think you are making, as various people have suggested, 100-year decisions. But I hope you will recognize that the vitality of the community in part rests on having the balance that in part government will provide. Second point, this is an example of what we have too often in any kind of entity. For 2.5 years, the city has been evaluating spending money on a new city hall at the existing location. I think I've been told that over 17 years various proposals have been presented. I suggest that time for the decision was 3 years ago. We shouldn't be reevaluating issues every time a smart developer comes up with an attractive idea. I note, for example, Envision, which reflects the really considered judgment of an awful lot of talented people, and is supposed to guide development, is often just a starting point because, again, smart developers come forward and suggest deviations from Envision as if that did not represent the standard. When we have this kind of ad hoc decision-making, it poses a problem, I think, not only for the staff, but even developers seeking to add benefits to the city. The third point I will make is one I think we'll all recognize, fairness. H.G. Hill has proposed a swap from a property in Columbia Avenue for what is clearly the most valuable piece of land in downtown Franklin, right on the city square. I think...
If you can go ahead and be wrapping up, please.
Thank you. It is a valuable piece of land. Many of us would undoubtedly like to participate. So in the event the board does decide to go forward and review a variety of alternatives, including this, we would also propose a swap. I'm the president of Church Street Associates, which owns the former Methodist Church, 2.5 acres, existing 65,000 facility, 300-person amphitheater. It could be used for a city hall. But the point I'm making is not necessarily with respect to our property, but fairness suggests that if you go down one road for one developer on a major piece of property, you have to consider opening the door for all those who might be interested in the property to have a fair crack at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to item 12, which is Amendment 3 to City of Franklin, item 12, that's right. City of Franklin Contract 2021-41, a professional services agreement with Orchard Hills and McClement, Inc., doing business as OHM Advisors for the design of the new City Hall facility, Phase 2 schematic design for a price increase of $123,400.
So this does update the current schematic design contract to reflect the scope of the building that we talked about last week. But I want to take some time to walk through a few slides that talk about what our steps forward might be. When we talked last Wednesday, we talked a little bit about what this might look like. This is sort of our initial cut at some of the things we would suggest we look at. First of all, kind of summarize where we are. There seems to be a pretty strong consensus that we need to replace the current City Hall. The building is insufficient to meet both ongoing and future needs. And so that's the path. It's how we get to that destination that we're looking at. To date, our efforts have really focused on replacing the building at this site. From the discussions we've had specifically last week, there's a desire from the board to at least investigate alternative locations and assess those, specifically locations that are in or around downtown, in addition to our current location. So what we'd like to do is kind of walk through some things that we think would help support that decision-making process, and that would be the staff focus, is how we provide you with information that helps you walk through what could be a pretty complex comparison, pros and cons of options, and evaluating that. First and foremost, we need to know the value of what we own. And so we are moving forward with identifying at least 2 partners to help us do appraisals of the current site. We would look at the site as a whole, inclusive of the parking garage, the site excluding the parking garage, as well as same with the Full-Tight Theater property. So with and without the whole property, if you took the garage out or if you took the theater out, what does that do to the relative value of the property? So kind of understanding the value from 2 independent appraisals related to the property that you currently own. It's our understanding that's probably going to take about 60 days to get that information. So we've already engaged in talking to at least one appraiser. We'd like to keep moving forward and get 2 on board and get information from them. Again, we think it'll probably take about 60 days to get that comprehensive review. Kind of as another step along with that, we would recommend that we develop, with your guidance, some overview of what are the parameters of an alternative site. What does it need to look like in terms of size, access, location? When we say downtown or downtown adjacent, what does that mean to us? And ultimately, as you get the appraisal and we have these components, we would hope to be able to really do some high level of a side-by-side. It may be generic in nature, but it would give us a sense of what are the costs associated with where we are today and that project as it stands versus implementing at a different site with the cost of that site and any other considerations that might be related to that, and give you some sort of comparative of what does that look like. The timing of implementation of both those projects won't be exactly the same as well. So how do we factor that in as well? Those are just examples. And both what you set as a sort of parameters to guide what you look at and alternative sites can also serve as a guide for us in assessing and evaluating relative cost and benefit as well. So that would be something we'd look to develop. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking through some of the legal parameters. This is not we have things in our charter that already address how we buy and sell property. And I'd like Shauna to sort of walk through that for you so you understand some of the existing framework and how that might fit with what you're looking at now, and how that might impact where we go in this process as well. So, Shauna?
So the charter does provide, as it does also in state law, that you can acquire and sell property. You are treated almost like a person in that regard. The municipal code, which is a creation of this board, sets out a process to sell and dispose of real and personal property. And in this case, we're just going to talk about the real property. So step 1, you have to declare the property surplus. Not surplus in the future, but surplus now. Like it's not, the property is no longer further feasible to the use of the cities. You have to make that determination at the time you're ready to sell it. So then step 2, once you've determined that it is surplus, you can either, when the value is likely more than $75,000, which is this property. That was put in, I think, for alleyways and that kind of thing. We're talking about this property. Then the property shall be sold by sealed bid after 45 days public notice, and you have to advertise it twice. And you can reject or refuse the bids, but when you're determining, these are your factors based on tax records, comparable sales, advice from real estate professionals, and other suitable criteria. And generally, there is a lot of case law that talks about going to the highest sealed bid that's above your appraised value.
At or above.
At or above your appraised value. The other way you can dispose of real property is step 2, I'll call it B, when it's determined to be more than $75,000, but you think that the property is well suited to be of public benefit, and you want to determine the purpose and the owner, you can create a public process to find the owner for that purpose. This is similar to how we handled the Hill property. But when you think about public benefit in a lot of case law is more like affordable housing, museums, things that the public can use and go to. Generally, it is not seen as commercial or residential housing that's at or above market value. So those are kind of two steps once you've determined its surplus. I will say that I found a statute that gives municipalities the authority to negotiate private sale, but only when you sell it to a nonprofit, again, for a public purpose. That's the only time we can negotiate by private sale. Let's see, I think
I think that covers
that
the
covers
primary
that.
pieces there. The cleanest way to do it, to kind of summarize from the discussions Sean and I have had, the cleanest way to do it is to buy one, then sell. Don't link it, do one transaction to buy what you're going to buy, and then sell what you have.
Buy, build, sell.
That's the cleanest. If you want to try to incorporate the value of property as part of the consideration, that may be a way to do it, but we got to be really clear about how we're assessing what we're getting in terms of if you're putting property that you're gaining from a transaction into that calculation of the total consideration, okay? So that's a somewhat unusual way to approach it, but we'd have to really be very clear up front about how we're doing that, how we reach a accurate and fair assessment of the value of property along with any additional payment that might be part of that transaction. But as Shauna said, at the end of the day, you're really obligated to take the highest value that you obtain for the property. You're getting the most, benefit to the taxpayer for the property that you're disposing of. That's the general principle that this is kind of founded on and the structure that it's meant to obtain for us as we work through it. So these are the rules that you've put in place or that are in the existing city charter related to it. It also, Shauna did touch on that it's consistent with the guidance in state law, but it's more specified within our charter, and we wanted you to make sure you understood kind of what's on the books that relates to purchase and sale of real property at this stage. So again, our recommendation as we move forward is to work this concurrently, get the appraisals, develop the generic criteria that help guide how we might compare these, further evaluate the legal process and make sure we're looking at how this might support what direction you may want to do. And of course, as we heard tonight, engage local stakeholders, including our citizens in general, folks like the Downtown Franklin Association, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, other business owners, if there are other city commissions or groups that you want to engage, this is an opportunity to do that. So we'll certainly take your guidance in how we work through that process and engage feedback from others in the community as we look and evaluate options. So our recommendation is to do what we discussed a little bit at the end of our meeting last Wednesday, which is to really move in parallel, allow us to move forward with at least the next stages of the schematic design, take it to that kind of next logical piece, which would be a 50% stage of schematic design that would involve us understanding how the roughly up to 4,500 square feet of retail space might fit in this site, how that might work, getting some guidance from historic zoning on some of those factors, as well as the building as a whole, and give you a sense of what 50% of schematic design looks like, how it answers some of the questions and concerns we've had about this site, that we would ask that you do that. The projected cost for getting to 50% schematic, and that's probably about a 4-month process, is around $480,000. So that is the cost that we would estimate to do that work and get to that stage on the City Hall at this site. Then, of course, we would work through in that same time frame, working through getting the appraisal, working through the framework, understanding what a process might look like and fleshing that out for you, and at least giving you some high-level financial comparison between the existing City Hall site and another site. It may be general in sense. If we could do a generic, we need to be careful about not getting too far down the road on one site versus another, but at least give you enough to understand what an alternative site might look like and what some of the constraints and opportunities might be with both staying here or looking at other options. So that's where we are. The action that we're asking at this stage is just to update schematic design contracts to reflect the building that we've talked about in terms of a range roughly 90 to 95,000 square feet at this site, and help us understand that better while we also do this additional review of alternative locations. And I'll stop there.
Questions, comments? Everybody good?
We do have this item on the voting session as well for the update of the contract.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, a couple of comments. Number one, when you were saying that the price, the sale price has to be equal to or above the appraisal. So you're not going to accept a price that's less than the appraised value if you were talking about selling. And I don't know that the board has ever said anything about selling this piece of property. Here's what I said 2 weeks ago to you, or a week ago. And I think Ms. Taylor said the same thing. All of this should have been worked out 2-3 years ago. I've said quite some time now, we need to look at an alternative site, but we also need to look to see if there's a public-private partnership out there. We had one, the economy fell out, and it went away, or I guess it went to the shelf for a few minutes. And that's basically what I've been saying for the time that we've had on this right here. I think we need to explore for the taxpayer's benefit, and that's every taxpayer. That's not someone who is living on 3rd Avenue or living on 4th Avenue or whatever. That's for every taxpayer. Because right now, you have, and we have, $10.5 million built into the project for an underground garage, and also $2.5 million going into relocating the employees. So that $10.5 million sitting in there, I've mentioned that a couple of times, that we need to look at. And I don't think, I got to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think we ever give it a shot at a public-private partnership or a different location with this option right here. And this, this may be it. I don't know that it is or isn't, but I do know this. We owe it to every taxpayer, 86,000, whatever it is, to explore whatever options we need to explore to make this as economically feasible as possible, rather than put a building down here that we've said ourselves is going to be here for 100 years. That means none of us will ever, sitting in here now, none of us will ever see that building being torn down. So that's basically all I've said, and I've added some more to it. It was when we did the budget, it was in for $24 million plus 8 for the garage. It's now at 85 to 89 million. I think that kind of pops out at me when we do that. So those are the things that have come to the forefront. I'm not sure that you could do the schematics and do the schematics if you're looking at site. You cannot do the schematics if you're looking for a public-private partnership with someone. At least I don't think you can. So,
let me help me understand that a little bit, because first of all, there are some parameters on how a public-private partnership can and cannot happen, and we can give you some on that. But what we're talking about at this site is a city building.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're talking about a private entity building it and us paying them back, or integrating use, because the proposal 14, 15 years ago was blending a hotel with this site, and it was about a 60,000 square foot city hall kind of put on the back of the site with the hotel on the square. It was essentially what that was. And obviously that's not what we're talking about today. So I'm trying to understand what you're asking us to assess from a public-private partnership standpoint.
See what is out there, Eric. You know, it doesn't, I'm not designing this, and I'm not suggesting to you that I want the hotel on the front and whatever. I'm not sure what a public-private partnership would propose. I doubt very seriously if you'd come up with one where it has a hotel on the front and a city hall on the back right now. But those options have been there in the past, and right now, we're at, again, in my opinion, we're at least 10 or 15 million dollars more on this than what we need to be at, and that's basically what I've said. So I you know, if we had done that, none of this would have been here now. It would have been gone, and we'd have been going forward with the building of that building, but it wasn't, and I haven't backed off a heck of a lot from exploring other options. I think we owe that to a whole bunch of people.
Eric, do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to just say that municipalities cannot enter into P3s. That is not.
They cannot enter
we
into
cannot
what?
enter into a P3. Municipalities are not allowed by law to do that. Our IDB can do that for you, but that requires you turning the property over to them, and they run the project. They own it. So if that is an option, but it never could have been us 14 years ago, and it never could have been. And so just so we could learn more, Vernon and I both went to training on P3s in Dallas, I don't know, what, 8 years ago maybe?
Twice.
And we've even tried to get our state legislators interested in allowing us, municipalities, to do P3s, but we have not been successful. We are a public-private partnership. Yeah, sorry, yeah, yes.
That's the-
And
Yeah,
the
sorry.
same goes
Slang
for
term.
design build. We can't do design
yes,
build.
That's true.
Why would that have not come up then 14 years ago? And I'm not saying 14 years ago it was a good project.
That was
It may have not
that was
been.
part of its demise.
Yeah, it was part of its demise.
I agree.
That and the recession, I
That-
think both
that and the
contributed to that.
recession.
And I think some concern that it would meet the city hall functional needs, that 60,000 square feet would not be viable long-term for us.
Okay.
Alderman Berger?
I just want to go beat my head against the wall for a moment. I honestly feel like that because it's just, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, because it's a really muddy situation right now. And I don't want it to get there. I just think maybe we're digging ourselves a hole that we don't want to get into. And I'm the one that said, we have to do our due diligence. We do have to do this because does it make sense? I think this board is pretty much, majority of the board at least, is saying we don't want to move it outside the core of downtown. And we pretty much have said that. We know there's studies, we've talked about this before, that city halls remain downtown. It brings vibrancy to your downtown, and when they move out, the downtowns suffer. And that's why some of these city halls have moved back to the core and have moved back to downtown. Now, if that is on their square, their circle, or whatever they call it, I don't know. I really didn't pay too much attention to if it was on the actual core of the squares, but in the core of the city, that was really true. So I got a couple questions. I think we got emails. I think you all got some emails too. We have to look at this from a cost standpoint. And Clyde, you're absolutely right. We should have been doing this 3 or 4 years ago. Back in 2007, when I was on this board, we did almost go with the public-private partnership. We almost had that deal done, and the economy killed it. But the other thing is, we were not selling the property. We were leasing that property out to them, and it was on the square. The hotel was on the back, if I recall correctly, because we fought about that. We said, no, we need to have the square presence. So with all that said, I think we still could do something with the public-private partnership. There's some leeway to do that as long as we own the property, we lease it out. We have to do some integral things that don't give them the power of control of that site, correct?
the kicker, I think, will be, as we've talked to our bond counsel, if bonds are involved, it becomes much more tricky. And I
Yeah.
don't think we can fund this on our own anyway.
And you can't, you have to, IBS.
So
You have
that's
to
why
go
the
through that.
IDB would have to be brought in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were going to do that. So my other comments were just even if this is more cost-effective to move it off the square and stay in the downtown core, say Columbia Avenue, honestly, Mr. Heller brought up, other people want to swap the properties, but there isn't really any other property in the downtown core. Franklin at Mac Hatcher is not in the downtown core. But, you look at it around, and where are the other properties? There really
He was
isn't
referring
anything.
to the Methodist Church property downtown, the
Oh.
old Methodist
Oh,
Church
the old
property, not the
Methodist.
one that's
Then
on.
you'd have to tear all that down and everything. But
Yeah,
anyway.
that's
Oh,
conjecture.
okay, I'm glad you corrected me on that, because I was thinking, wow, that's sort of out there. But, so the integrity to downtown square, we were talking about this in 2008, and guess what, or 7, and the economy fell. Guess where we are right now? We're back to that square one again, because the economy is starting to fall out again. I don't know why we keep getting ourselves in this horrible cycle, but I would say that I think the bottom line here is, how much will we spend to make this decision moving off the square, possibly? How much is it going to cost us to do our due diligence? And if the public knew that, number one, the studies are ironclad out there that show when your city halls move out and move away, your city's downtown core suffers. That's why they like to keep it in the core of the downtown. If our citizens knew that, if they knew that the integrity of the square was really, really important, and how much money we're going to start to spend 4 and 5 months to go back and research all this, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to spend all that money and go back through all this? I mean, I argued for this 2 weeks ago. We need to do our due diligence. But I'm wondering, how much is it going to cost us to do the due diligence? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to set us back? How much is the cost factor? We're headed down this way right now, people. The economy is headed down. Whether you like it or not, we're going down. And how long we're going to take to get back up, who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball. So sometimes when I'm talking to constituents, they go, what are you doing? You're going to go spend more money and spend more time, and even if it costs us $5 to $6 million or $10 million, maybe you ought to just stay where you are. Maybe you ought to do what you need to do. And so I think this whole question that we're going to wrestle with encompasses a lot of questions. Why is it financially responsible to go ahead and do all this due diligence? And then, as you said, we have to sell the property, we have to buy it. You really can't swamp it, according to what you're saying to our city attorney, correct?
There is a way to do it. It will be very tricky.
Yeah.
And you would have to create, I think, a committee of people to evaluate, to figure out, because you're going to get offers for property and you're going to get straight cash offers, and how you evaluate it will
Right.
be very tricky.
So that's the other
It's the
thing.
cleanest to buy and build, and then declare it surplus, and then
So I'm
sell.
going to say one more thing, and then be quiet, because we know we need to move on. I think with that said, it just looks so cumbersome to get to that stage that I think it's like taking your wallet out and shelling out the money, shelling out the money, shelling out the money. And I'm like, wait a minute, stop the presses. Do we need to do this? I mean, I honestly thought we needed to do our due diligence, and I'm not sure how that looks right now. Because number one, I think we should, my heart says, and everything else says that we should stay on the square. We need the presence on the square. We need to keep the integrity of downtown in the square. I know it isn't always, 100% always been on the square, City Hall. And we use City Hall on the square a lot. We interact with City Hall a lot, even on our weekends, during our festivals. City Hall is very active. So, I don't know. I need to hear from my constituents. I think all the constituents, all the people in the city need to be talking to their aldermen up here. We need to know what you want us to do, because this is a sticky situation right now, and I think that it's really important that we get it right.
Alderman
Thanks.
Peterson.
Just to say, could you give, could you send to us maybe half a dozen
I'm
examples of
sorry.
places that have moved out and
Yeah.
then come back? because I've looked at some things, but they are not necessarily
I
on
think
the
you
main
asked me that,
street.
and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot over the holiday to send it. I will do that.
Sure, sure. That would be helpful. Because a lot of times they've moved, but not,
You
a
wanna
couple of
say
blocks
something?
away. You know.
You want to say?
Yep. And in following up on Alderman Peterson, I think you said, but Alderman Berger said 30 back a few weeks ago, month ago, whatever. And because I remember what I said you can't count Austin, Texas, and you can't count Carson City, Nevada in those 30. So I would like to see those also, if you want to make them less than 30. And the criteria is they were out someplace and they built them within the last few years, and they brought them back down to the square or whatever resembles the square in the particular town that we're building the new city halls in. So they should be no more than 5 years old. Those were the items that we looked at. And Eric sent out some pictures that, I guess most of them were they in Tennessee?
It was most in Tennessee. There are a few other places. It's probably around 23, 24 that were largely in or adjacent, like in or around downtowns.
Around downtown,
Yeah.
because several
A lot
of
of
them,
them were-
several
yeah, it was
of
a mix
them
of downtown
were
and
several
very
blocks
adjacent,
from
yeah.
what you'd
Yes.
call their square, which
Yeah,
they may
yeah.
or may
Yeah,
not
and it
be.
But still in a
depends.
downtown.
It depends how their downtown function,
Yeah.
too. Some of them were situated a lot different than ours.
Of course, if you really got down to a definition, I guess the Hill property would be within a few blocks of downtown. So,
Did you want to make a comment, Mr. Girth?
If I could, please, thank you, because all the comments have merit. And being very close to this project, since the group came to where I worked in 2006 to look at the village hall that I was responsible for building, that eventually led to me coming to Franklin in early 2007, 16
so you had to
years
get out
ago.
of town after that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. And what we've heard and what we've learned over the last year or two is that this redevelopment of this very historic, important site comes with a large price tag. And it's incumbent that we show the citizens, our neighbors, that we're making a prudent and responsible decision here. And the offer that Mr. Granberry, Mr. Heller, and others that may be interested could have some merit, but what we're proposing is to understand what is the value of our property. And doing a couple appraisals over the next 3 months gets us there. Then we know what we have. Then also during that time, not to get into depth of what Alderman Berger brought up of due diligence, is to let us come back with you of what that might look like. Because right now we know what we have here. We know that we've got a predominant site. We know that we're designing a building that will span the test of time in a very prominent location in historic downtown Franklin. We also know what it's going to cost. What we don't know is all these other alternatives. But over the next few months, we'll give you some of that information so we can get you to a decision point of whether or not to stop where we are on the schematic design, because we want to keep going. We don't know yet where we're going to end up. And spending several $100,000 to get us to that 50%, to continue to work on the plan that we've engaged the community in, is a prudent and responsible decision. Then when we come back to you in April-ish, March, whenever that time is, then you'll have more information, and that's maybe where the decision point comes into play. Finally, I'd like to say this, because it's real. We know that we've been blessed and unemployment is low here. And the impact of that low unemployment comes in the development industry. It comes with tradespeople of all disciplines. It comes with design professionals. And we have a consultant that is really engaged with us to do something special in redeveloping this site. I can assure you that when you stop a process, whether it's the physical construction of a building or it's design of a project, you lose momentum. And we've already talked to our consultant, and yes, they want to stay engaged and do whatever. but they can't be assured that the 20 or so other consultants on their team are going to be available if we stop and start up. So what I'm urging you and recommending is that we keep the continuity going. We are holding them accountable with a certain amount of work that needs to be done each month and a subsequent payment, which Eric reflected. So I ask you to think about that as you make the decision in amending the professional services agreement. It keeps us going, and it does valuable work on how the building will function. Whether or not it stays here, we've done the space needs analysis. Thank you for allowing me to share that on behalf of our team.
We're going to move on to item 13, if we could, which is a development agreement with the Refuge Center for counseling for the extension of temporary and permanent sanitary sewer infrastructure located along a section of Long Lane.
We talked about this a few months ago, and this is the agreement that reflects what we spoke about, which is both a temporary service and then a pathway forward to a more permanent service installation. I know Vernon's worked with the team, and we've got folks from the Refuge Center team here as well. So whoever wants to start.
When Amy and Greg came in with the Refuge Center proposal, there was an intent to extend the permanent, extend our sanitary sewer system in that area. Through their work and analysis, it's quite costly. So we've come up with a temporary solution that we shared with you a couple months back, and they've agreed to make that installation at their cost. They would design it and install it, and then they would also contribute eventually to the permanent system installation, and they would post letters of credit to make sure that the temporary system gets installed, and then their contribution to the permanent system. And the value of those letters of credit each, we had thought would be in the neighborhood of $400,000, but the final cost will come out as they complete the site plan. What this does, though, is incredibly important, that once this agreement is approved, they do a little bit more work, they will be able to obtain a mass grading permit and then get out on that site and start preparing the site. And hopefully, with a little fundraising, which I'm sure the community will step up to for this type of important use in our community, we'll see a building there sooner than later. It's the best option. I think we came about to ensure that our sanitary sewer infrastructure gets extended and they contribute their proportionate share in others.
And we've got Amy Alexander from the Refuge Center and Greg Gamble, and we'll give you a couple of minutes if you need it.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that the temporary sewer construction document plans have been filed with the city. The site plan documents for the building, the parking areas, stormwater infrastructure have been filed with the city. The mass infrastructure plan that Vernon referenced, mass grading plan that Vernon referenced, is waiting at one stop for this approval of this agreement. So Refuge Center would or should be able to start grading sometime around February 1st of March.
I'd just like to say that the Refuge Center has been working towards this vision for 121 months. That's just over a decade. And so it feels really hopeful and exciting to be sitting here tonight talking about grading the site. So just thank you for having us, and thank you for all the ways that you've helped us towards this long-term vision.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to item 14, which is a procurement award to Waypoint Analytical LLC of Memphis for $27,676 for industrial pretreatment sampling and testing. Is there any question about that one? We'll go on to item 15, which is a procurement award to Heron Construction Company of Etowah, Tennessee, in the total lump sum of $997,000 for water treatment plant valve access improvements for the Water General Division of the Water Management Department. Any question about that? Okay, we'll go on to item 16. Good job again, Michelle. Item 16, which is discussion of ordinance 2022-47, an ordinance to amend Ordinance 2022-03, amending Title 16 for public gathering and expression events. This was asked to be brought forward tonight by Alderman Hanson. And I've got a number of speakers also, so how would you like to proceed?
We can provide a little context. I want to respect if the alderman wants to say something first, or we can give a little context and then hand it over, however you want to do it. Okay, so just a little bit here. Obviously, this has been something we've worked on, put in place about 2.5 years ago. After a lot of study, we looked at the incidents in Charlottesville. We looked at what Murfreesboro experienced, what Shelbyville experienced with some large-scale public expression or demonstration events. And so what we put in place was really a permitting process, a process to facilitate public expression and to do it in a safe way and do it in a timely way, recognizing that there's a need to do that. And we provided a framework for that, and it really largely worked well. In that 2-year period, we had 24 requests, 23 of which were issued within 48 hours of the request. The one that was not, quite frankly, was requested the Thursday before the Pilgrimage Festival to close Boyd Mill Road to demonstrate against traffic. And we basically said that would be difficult for us to accommodate, given that we had a large community event going on at the same time. But again, our answer wasn't really no. It was, you can demonstrate on the sidewalk that day if you'd like, and if you want to explore the shutdown of that road, we can work through the permit process, but at a different date. We did not hear back from that individual. But I do want to tell you, that one example tells you how it's really set up to really facilitate and help them happen. There were adjustments made in the ordinance amendment that you did last year, that the board approved last year, and they really came from a couple sources of feedback. We had heard some feedback from the public, from our citizens, generally about some concerns. We had also consulted with the police department around some specific concerns that they saw, and there were 4 primary adjustments that we made. One was to limit downtown evening activities, permitted activities, on Friday and Saturday evenings. We also had a general prohibition on events after dark for the permit. Now, it doesn't mean there isn't still an access through a special event permit. It just says for the purposes of the demonstration permit that would be a limiting factor. We also addressed multiple events. If someone is doing the same use of the same space, to make that once per month, so that others might have the opportunity to use the same space, or the general public. And then we also got at the fact that amplification would be a trigger, if you will, for permitting, that would also be something that would be looked at. So those are 4 components that were integrated into that update. Our goal all along has been to facilitate the way to have demonstrations, to have public expression, to do it safely, so that we could plan for what they are. Some of these can potentially generate a counter demonstration or some other effect, and to make sure that we are prepared for it and to support folks with it. But it also got at a balancing act of how we allow for those, but also consider the rights of others to use the same space. Also it might be another entity who wants to express themselves. It could just be the general public who wants to be on the square on a Friday night and enjoy that, or a Saturday night and enjoy that. So it was how you balance that and how you provide a framework for that has been our goal. It's really not to stop it or limit it. It's to help us facilitate managing it in a way that respects the rights of everybody involved to use public space and use it in a way that serves the community well. Of those 23, many of them are religious in nature. They're not all. Others are more of a political statement that citizens wanted to make. All of those really have worked, like I said, worked well, and our sense was to try to fine-tune it. And one thing we've said as we've done this is that we'll learn as we do things. And I think we're at that stage to get feedback from you about how we look at the modifications that were made and how it's working now. And if there are adjustments you want us to further explore, we'll be glad to do that and work through what that looks like. I have some thoughts if you want them on where we may go with it, but I'd be glad to hear your thoughts and any questions you have, and especially Alderman Hanson, who requested that we talk about this item. So, thank you.
I'll go ahead and start before the speakers come up. I know we discussed what's something called the DD or downtown district. Can you define that area for me, please?
Not as far as like this road to this road. It's on our zoning map.
Is it just the square, or does
no,
it extend
it
farther?
extends further than that. It's
So
not just the square. I do
Would
know
you
that.
say this was mostly for safety, and then also things that could potentially be a nuisance because of sound?
No. So in the 2019 ordinance, we created the intent and the purpose, and we said that it was to coordinate multiple uses of our limited space, and our squares where most people would want to protest and demonstrate, but to also ensure that the streets and sidewalks remain safe and accessible, and to assure that there is still reasonable access to the public or by other community members not involved in the requested events. So when we were thinking about the downtown district area, it was mostly about multiple uses of the same space at the same time. And then, of course, amplification. And, you know,
I remember yoga on the square being a tipping point.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that was.
Yeah, yoga on the square was kind of a big deal on a Saturday morning, taking up the whole square plus the street and then the outside of the street. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And one thing I should have mentioned, our focus all along and what's supported in the review of case law that our law department did is we never get into what the message is. We get into time, place, and manner with a focus in particular on public safety, as well as respecting the rights of others and all to use that public space. What's the way to provide a equal access to the use of that public space? So that's been our focus all along, and that's where we've tried to get in terms of what the ordinance provides us. I think Amy's going to talk about what downtown district is.
Yeah, so it's that, the colors are bad on here, I'm sorry. I was going to say the dark red, but it's kind of both red. It's the 16 blocks, essentially, right here. All of this area that is red, and a little bit here, a couple of these red properties, and then this one here. This, I know you can't tell the difference here, but this red is a change of zoning to a different zoning district, if that helps.
It's really that downtown core.
Yes.
It looks better on that TV than that.
It sure does. Yeah, dark red versus true red. Got it? Maroon versus red. Yes.
So I guess my point is, if we're preserving downtown, and of course there's different levels of people that want to interact in different types of protest or expression. And when I went to you in October after we passed this, well, even before then, I repeatedly asked, I have it in writing here, and it's also on recording, I repeatedly asked if this could accidentally be used towards the individual that does the prayer and worship on the square on Saturdays. And continually it was somewhat deflected and turned back around towards more of a protest nature, which is concerning for safety and many other reasons. So then once it passed, and I know that there was great apprehension on everybody's part. I've gone back and watched the videos over and over. This was not a unanimous, yay, let's pass it. There was a lot of apprehension here. So the unintended consequence was when I came to you in October that the individual that I had asked about had been approached and almost received a citation but did not. And then you said there were so many complaints, so you sent me 4 complaints. Of those 4, one was at 10 o'clock in the morning, which was not that individual. Another was for the ghost hunter and demon chaser, Brad, who's out periodically. And then the other two, one was from Jason Potts, Alderman Jason Potts, and then another individual that had remained unnamed calling as well. And when we compare a lot of complaints in the downtown district. I want to compare that to almost 150 police calls at one establishment. So would you say that over the course of a few years of somebody being on the square and we have possibly 2 valid police complaints versus annual complaints of over 120 or 130 to one establishment that also exudes a lot of sound in the downtown district, how do we draw that line between what's a nuisance, what's detracting from quiet enjoyment for the people that live downtown versus what appears to almost be targeted in some respects? And do I understand, yes, that other people may want to enjoy this space, but even on a crowded night, there was still, and a Christmas tree on the square, there was still a lot of other space for people to enjoy. And I think that in general, a lot of times, it does more good than harm. And I think that I've seen a pattern in the little over a year that I've been elected that's gone down a certain demographic path that's not palatable in this community, and I don't think it was intentional, and none of the 3 instances I'm speaking of are related, but they're all in the same demographic. And for me, as a Christian and a member of this community and conservative, it's it's gravely concerning, and now we're gathering national attention for this, and this is not the community that Franklin is. People bought into Franklin because it's a Hallmark movie, and we've got to watch this.
So,
No applause, please. We want to hear from people speaking rather than applause.
So, Ms. Billingsley, before you make your response, if you don't mind, we need to make a correction, please, Alderman Blanton. That was not my complaint. That was a complaint that was actually sent to me by a resident in Franklin, which I properly forwarded to the authorities so that they could follow. Well, but let's not label it as Jason Potts' complaint. You need to be very clear with that.
Just, I think what we're looking at is we've got a distinction in different types of things. You've got a private business that has specific regulations related to its liquor license, its beer permit, its amplification. There's specific regulations around amplification outside of special events or demonstrations that are applicable to that and that are enforced. And we went through that pretty painstakingly a number of years ago in terms of how you look at how amplification can be disruptive from a private establishment or even a private residence and how it might affect folks there. So there are some specific different parts of the code that relate to it. And I will say, I want to be clear, there were other complaints I've received outside of what you referred to from the city attorney, including Downtown Franklin Association, multiple other ones. So it's not just a handful. There have been consistent complaints, especially around the amplification component. And I think that brings me the thing I would suggest we think about as we look at what's a solution, what's a way forward. To me, it seems like the permit should be looked at when you get into either amplification, which disrupts the quiet enjoyment of the square, the public space, and any group that is over the 20, which we've identified as the threshold. I think it's really hard to look at a small group that may be there to pray or they may be there to go get ice cream together. It's hard. How do you tell? The enforceability of a group that's smaller, which I think one of the groups that we're talking about is in that category. I think when you get into, so you maybe look at the restrictions we put in place, a group that is smaller and not amplifying, I'm not sure we want to get into that. That's so hard to differentiate. But I do think if you're amplifying or your group gets large enough, you're starting to take over the public space. And that's not necessarily wrong or something we want to prevent. It just would be good for us to know about it so that we can support it for safety reasons, but also so that we can say, are there others that want to use the space as well? And how do we want to manage how often or how frequently that either larger group or something that uses amplification or both takes in that space and uses it in that manner. Again, it's not a prohibition. The answer is hardly ever no. It's what path do you take? Is it a special event? Is it a demonstration or public expression permitting? Is it, is it so small that it doesn't meet any of those thresholds? So, like I said, the answer's really never been no. It's here's the framework you need to work on, and then approach us and we'll help you find the path. Things like the quarterly worship service that happens there, that goes through a permitting process that we work on, and it works great. So, it's how you want us to guide it and what parameters you want to put on it. Those are the couple adjustments I think kind of are in that common sense realm. Again, we never get into the message. It's about how you do it. And that's something for you to think about is, you may agree with a certain message, but that same rule can be applied to a message you don't like. So make sure you're comfortable with both sides of that coin would just be my advice as we think about it.
Would it be satisfactory to go ahead and ask the speakers to speak, Alderman Hanson? If they'll line up, please, at the podium. That's Carvis Russell, Bill Woodward, Rick Davis, Jaden Stevens, and Pastor Marvin Young II. I'm going to give you 2 minutes each, and we'll be timing you. So let's go ahead and get started, please. Mr. Russell.
Okay.
Russell's gone. Bill Woodward. Go ahead, Mr. Woodward.
Good evening. I just I don't have a whole lot of context on this. I know Mr. Daniels. I've participated in the events that he's hosted. I'm just the thing that I'm concerned most about is that I know my First Amendment right contains a component of assembly. I have the right to do that. The last time I read the Constitution, it didn't have a permit attached to that right and that freedom. And I get really concerned because I've spent 88 months outside this country in special operations, and to sit here, and the thing I'm not lost on tonight is I see this particular issue behind water, sewer, HOAs. We're talking about a right. This is a key tenet in the fabric of this nation. And I could care less what somebody wants to do in the public square. It's the public square. You don't own it. We do. We own it. It's my right. And that's my concern. And you can't hide this behind a permit or any other thing you want to subjugate this to. It just doesn't work. So I think, if I was hosting this type of event, absolutely, I want to get along with all my brothers and sisters. I mean, we're all up against the same stuff. But to say that I can't express myself openly in the public square for religious reasons, for whatever, but again, there's five key tenets in that First Amendment. And me to be able to peaceably assemble in the public square is my right.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis?
Hi, I'm Rick Davis. I moved here 15 years ago to this part of Tennessee, and one of the reasons I moved here was this is the Bible Belt. And I'm very sad tonight to come here and listen to the Bible Belt where people worship God, are thankful for Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and to hear that I can't go around the square and pray or lift my hands because I might get arrested. And you will say, I heard you say, that's not true. But I have a friend here, Jeff Daniels, that he was told that. So I just want to be clear that whatever approval or whatever happens here tonight, that we remember that this is the Bible Belt. And we do have freedoms. And if it wasn't for Jesus Christ, I'm telling you folks, we'd be in deep doo-doo. Do you want this to go public all over the nation? Middle Tennessee, the Bible Belt, and what we're doing here. So I hope that you all really consider and think how you're going to approve this thing. Or even if you do approve it, you got to scale this thing down. And I know your concerns, I heard them. But this is a minute few people that maybe go out in the morning and pray for our city. They're praying for our city. And a few people at night. Not that many people's doing it. So I just want you to pray about it. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
Thank you very much, and good evening. So I was at the very first one of these prayer nights, and it's Jaden Stevens. I live on Bush Drive, been here for 11 years, was raised in Brentwood. And I was at the very first one, and I was with my wife and my 2 young sons, and they were amazed to see the church outside of the walls. And we actually ended up that night going down to Kilwins and getting ice cream and praying for people on the way. And my sons were like, "Is this what we do at church, Dad?" I was like, "Well, we should. I mean, this is part of it. It's not the walls or not the church." And it gave me an opportunity to share a message with my 2 young, my 10 and my now 13-year-old boy, that has transformed their lives and what we do and what they think is normal. And I understand being respectful and noise and annoying people, and at the same time, I feel like the priceless work of the prayers of the men, women, young women who have been there is just it's beyond measure for this community. And as a member of it, I'm just thrilled to know Jeff and his wife and to know their faithfulness. One other thing, like, I have seen a miracle there. I'm just going to say it. It wasn't mine, but we prayed for a woman who had a mass in her colon, and it was an Eastern European couple, and the husband, he was probably 7 years old, well-dressed man, came back the week later weeping with his arms in the air for a couple hours, saying that they couldn't find that mass when they went to the doctor. And so there's some things beyond just ordinances and whatnot that go on here, and I, for one, am for Jesus Christ, and so I'm just thankful for this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Young?
So you're really going to limit the pastor to 2 minutes?
It's the only opportunity I ever have to limit the pastor to 2 minutes, Marvin.
I'm not going to, I promise you I won't preach. What I'll say is, I am also one of the groups that's downtown. I've been out, I don't know if you all know, but I've been downtown now about 6 years. My responsibility to God first is to pray for the community and its leaders, which are you all. And we pray for you all the time. And, you know, when I prayed for the meeting, my prayer then was that you are all led by God. I know that there are some decisions that you have to make that, you know, to govern the community. And I've had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Stuckey. And as I told him that, you know, I believe what's happening there is God. That's what I believe. I know that my mission is from him. If I speak about our issue, is the limited to 20 people. That's a struggle because, you know, we may have more than 20 people. Do I take the chance and violate, you know, an ordinance because I have 23 people or 25 people that may want to come out and pray? And we've had up to 60 people at one point. And that was actually before the ordinance had changed originally. But what we did to comply to certain things was put them in groups of 10. I'm asking that all of you all consider first, pray about it. Seek God. And consider the things that can affect your entire community. We don't need negative publicity. We need positive publicity here. It's a great city. It's a great place. Honestly, when I got here, I struggled. God sent me, but I love it. It's my city, and whatever I can do is for its leadership in any capacity spiritually. I'm here to lead, to guide, instruct, direct, pray, cover. But I'm asking you all, pray first, that you all come up with a solution that can satisfy everyone. And yes, we do have to consider those of us that we don't agree with. They have that right to express themselves as well. So when those decisions are made, we have to consider that. When we pray, we praying 6:30 in the morning on Fridays. At one point, we did have amplified music. And we did recently again, and I was kind of told that we couldn't do it, but if we did it, we can only do it once a month by permit. I ask that you reconsider the amount of people. And I know that you have to look at it from both ways, but 25, 30 people, we're down there praying. And we're praying for the leadership that's sitting in this room, that God would direct you the way God needs you to go in reference to what you do in this city. And I appreciate the work you all do. I appreciate your consideration and prayer that God would figure out the solution to this. If we trust God, He already has the solution. So God bless y'all. Thank y'all for the time.
Thank you. We're adjourned. See you in about 10 to 12 or 13.
10 to 12 minutes.